Have you ever felt like you were different? Like you were destined for something greater but couldn't quite explain why? The truth is, being chosen is not about luck. It's about resilience, purpose, and the undeniable power within you. The world may resist you. Your presence may make others uncomfortable, and your success may attract envy. But that's only because you are walking in your destiny. In this story, we'll uncover the reasons why your path is so unique, why your haters can't look away, and how embracing your calling will unlock a future beyond what you imagined. Get ready, because this message is for you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss more inspiring stories like this. Now, let's begin. There is something different about you. Maybe you've felt it your whole life, or maybe it's only just now beginning to make sense. You walk into a room, and without even trying, you shift the energy. People notice, some admire, others resent, but no one can ignore you. Why? Because you are chosen. Being chosen isn't about luck or privilege. It's not about wearing a crown or carrying a title. It's about the undeniable presence that radiates from within you, the kind that can't be manufactured, the kind that can't be faked. It's a power that makes people take notice, even when they don't understand why. Think about it. When Jesus walked through the streets, he didn't need to announce himself. His presence alone turned heads, stirred hearts, and drew crowds. Even the Pharisees who despised him couldn't look away. His power, his truth, his very existence was a challenge to the status quo. And so is yours. But here's the thing. Being chosen doesn't come without a price. The weight of your calling can feel overwhelming. You wonder why you face opposition, why certain doors close, why some people who once walked with you suddenly disappear. The answer is simple. You disrupt the norm. The world is comfortable with mediocrity. It embraces predictability. But you were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to follow the script written by others. Your very existence challenges the way people see themselves. Without even speaking, you become a mirror, forcing others to confront what they've buried deep inside. Their doubts, their insecurities, their unrealized potential, it all rises to the surface when they look at you. And for many, that is terrifying. Some will call you arrogant, some will try to downplay your achievements. Others will fabricate reasons to dismiss you. Why? Because accepting your greatness forces them to question why they haven't stepped into theirs. It's easier to tear you down than to build themselves up. But here's what you need to remember. Their perception of you has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. You were never meant to live in the shadows. You were born to shine, to lead, to break chains, to set new standards. This journey will not be easy. But was it ever meant to be? Every great figure in history, Moses, David, Joseph, faced opposition. The very thing that made them stand out was the thing that made them a target. And yet, they prevailed. Moses had a speech impediment, yet he led a nation to freedom. David was just a shepherd boy, yet he slayed a giant and became a king. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, yet he rose to power and saved an entire kingdom. What made them different? They didn't shrink back. They embraced their calling despite the cost. And so must you. So, if you feel different, if you feel like you don't quite fit in, if you've been wondering why the road seems harder for you than for others, take heart. It's because you are built for more. You are walking a path that not everyone is willing to walk. But here's the truth. The view from the top is worth every struggle. Your time is now. The power within you is undeniable. You don't need to seek attention. You don't need to prove yourself. Just by existing, by stepping fully into your purpose, you are already shifting the atmosphere. And that is what makes you dangerous. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll uncover why your very presence makes others uneasy, and why that's exactly what you need to embrace. The truth about being chosen is that your very existence unsettles those who have chosen to settle. You don't need to speak, you don't need to explain. Yet somehow, you expose what people would rather ignore. Your life is a mirror, reflecting their hidden fears, unfulfilled dreams, and the choices they wish they had made. And for many, that reflection is too much to bear. Jesus himself was a mirror to the people of his time. He revealed hypocrisy without uttering a single insult. He stood before the self-righteous and made them uncomfortable, not by condemning them outright, but by simply being who he was, pure, powerful, and purposeful. His presence alone forced others to see their own shortcomings. And what did they do? Instead of changing, they tried to silence him. That's exactly why you face resistance. Your success reminds people of their complacency. Your confidence highlights their insecurity. Your courage exposes their fear. Instead of being inspired, many feel confronted, as if your mere existence is a judgment on their choices. It isn't, but their reaction tells you everything. Have you ever noticed how some people celebrate your victories, while others find ways to minimize them? It's not because you've done anything wrong. It's because they see in you what they could have been if only they had dared to try. Deep down, they know they are capable of more, but acknowledging that would require them to change. And change is uncomfortable. That's why some will criticize you, dismiss you, or even turn against you. Not because they hate you, but because they hate the truth your life reveals about them. It is easier to call you arrogant than to confront their own insecurities. It is simpler to call you too much than to admit they have settled for less. But here's what you must understand. Their reaction is not your burden to carry. Your calling is not to make people comfortable, it is to shine. You are not responsible for how they perceive your light, only that you keep it burning. Some will be drawn to it, others will run from it. That is not your concern. Your mission is to walk boldly in who you were created to be. Just as Jesus did not dim his light to avoid offending others, you must not shrink yourself to fit into spaces you've outgrown. Those who are meant to rise with you will find the courage to face their own reflection. Those who aren't, they will either learn from you or remove themselves from your path. Either way, your job remains the same: to keep rising, to keep growing, and to keep walking in the power that was always meant for you. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll explore the price of elevation, the loneliness, the sacrifices, and the strength it takes to walk this path alone. Elevation is not without cost. The higher you climb, the lonelier it gets. Some who started the journey with you will not finish it by your side. The air at the top is thinner, and not everyone is built to breathe it. But that solitude? It's not a curse, it's preparation. Being chosen means stepping into a life that not everyone will understand. People will misunderstand your purpose, misinterpret your actions, and even question your intentions. When you begin to rise, you will notice the shift. Friends who once cheered for you start to distance themselves, conversations become strained, and the circles that once embraced you suddenly feel foreign. Jesus himself experienced this. As his ministry grew, so did the opposition. Many followed him when he performed miracles, but when he spoke hard truths, when he challenged their beliefs, they turned away. Even his own disciples struggled to comprehend the magnitude of his calling. In his most trying hour in the Garden of Gethsemane, those closest to him fell asleep when he needed them most. And yet, he pressed on. So must you. Not everyone is equipped to walk with you into the next level of your calling. Some people are only meant to accompany you for a season. They were there to teach you, to shape you, and to prepare you. But when the season changes, you must be willing to let go. Carrying people who are not meant for the next phase of your journey will only slow you down. It will drain you, confuse you, and cause unnecessary pain. But the loneliness, the solitude, it is not empty. It is where your strength is refined, where your resilience is tested, and where your faith deepens. It is in those quiet moments, when no one is around to validate you, that you truly discover what you are made of. You learn to rely not on applause, not on recognition, but on purpose. Think of the eagle. It soars alone, far above the turbulence, above the distractions. Unlike other birds that travel in flocks, the eagle understands that its greatest strength is found in its ability to navigate the heights alone. You, too, are called to rise beyond the ordinary, to break free from the limitations others accept as normal. This journey will demand sacrifice. There will be moments of doubt where you wonder if the loneliness is worth it. But remember this: every great leader, every chosen one, has walked this path. Moses, isolated in the wilderness before leading his people. Joseph, abandoned in a pit before ruling a nation. David, hiding in caves before becoming king. Their solitude was not rejection. It was preparation. So if you find yourself walking alone, take heart. You are not abandoned. You are being elevated. And the path you walk now will lead you to places others only dream of reaching. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will uncover why your rise disrupts the status quo, and why that is exactly what you were born to do. When you rise, you do more than elevate yourself. You challenge the very foundation of the world around you. Your presence alone is enough to disrupt the status quo, unsettle those who have grown comfortable with mediocrity, and shake the systems that were designed to keep people in place. You are not meant to follow the rules set by a society that rewards conformity and punishes ambition. When Jesus walked the earth, he didn't blend in. He didn't obey the unspoken expectation to remain silent, to keep his power subdued, to conform to religious traditions that had lost their purpose. He challenged the Pharisees. He overturned the tables in the temple. He broke societal norms by speaking to the outcasts, healing the untouchables, and showing mercy to those deemed unworthy. And in doing so, he disrupted the world. So do you. People resist change, even when they secretly crave it. They fight against those who refuse to be bound by limitations, because if you succeed, if you prove that more is possible, then they must acknowledge that they too had the power to break free all along. But instead of embracing the discomfort of transformation, many choose the comfort of denial. It is easier to attack the one who rises than to confront their own fears. Have you ever noticed how those who once celebrated you suddenly turn cold when your success becomes undeniable? How those who once supported your growth begin to question your motives? It's not because you've changed. It's because your growth exposes their stagnation. They cannot pretend that their excuses are valid when standing next to someone who refused to accept limitations. Look at the great disruptors of history: Moses, David, Esther, Paul. None of them simply fit in. Moses defied Pharaoh and led a nation to freedom. David defied a king's doubt and slayed a giant. Esther defied expectations and saved her people. Paul defied religious tradition and carried the gospel beyond the borders of Israel. And what happened to each of them? They faced resistance. They faced threats. They faced betrayal. Because when you choose to rise, you force others to make a choice: grow with you or fight against you. But here is what you must remember: their resistance does not define you. Their discomfort is not your burden. The world will always try to silence voices that speak truth, to dim the light of those who shine too brightly. But you were not made to be silent. You were not made to fit in. You were created to lead, to transform, to set a new standard. When you refuse to settle, you inspire others to do the same. Some will follow. Some will resist. Some will try to destroy what you build. But none will be able to ignore you. So, stand firm. Keep moving forward. Do not shrink yourself to make others comfortable. The world does not need another person who follows the rules. It needs someone willing to change them. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will explore how those who resist you the most often become your most loyal audience, and how their opposition is proof that you are on the right path. Here's something you might not have realized yet. Your haters are often the ones watching you the closest. They won't admit it, but they are your most dedicated audience. They track your every move, analyze your decisions, and even predict your next steps. Why? Because deep down, they are fascinated by you. Look at Jesus. The Pharisees followed him everywhere, not to learn, not to support, but to find fault. They watched his every move, listened to his every word, and plotted against him in secret. But in doing so, they spread his message further than even some of his disciples. Every time they questioned him, every time they tried to discredit him, they gave him a larger platform to reveal the truth. Their opposition only magnified his influence. And the same is true for you. People who resist you are not just fighting against you, they are paying attention to you. They see something in you that challenges them, something that forces them to confront their own limitations. And instead of dealing with that discomfort, they fixate on you. They critique your success, downplay your efforts, and sometimes even create obstacles to slow you down. But here's what they don't understand. Their attention fuels your momentum. Think about it. Every time someone speaks against you, they bring more eyes to your journey. Their doubts spark curiosity in others. Their gossip spreads your name. Their criticism forces you to sharpen your skills, to refine your message, and to keep moving forward with even greater precision. Remember Joseph? His own brothers despised him because of his dreams. They sold him into slavery, thinking they could silence him. But in doing so, they unknowingly set him on the path to his destiny. Without their betrayal, he would have never reached the palace. What they meant for harm, God used for good. The same applies to you. So when you feel resistance, when you hear whispers of doubt, when people actively work against you, don't be discouraged. Recognize it as confirmation that you are on the right path. If you weren't making an impact, they wouldn't care. If you weren't shifting the atmosphere, they wouldn't react. Your presence, your purpose, and your growth make them uncomfortable, and that discomfort is their problem, not yours. Use their opposition as fuel. Let their doubt become your motivation. Keep going, keep building, and keep proving, not to them, but to yourself, that you were made for this. And here's the best part. Some of those same people who resist you today will come around later. Some of your greatest critics will eventually become your greatest supporters, not because you changed, but because they did. They will see the truth, and when they do, they will remember that you never wavered. So let them watch, let them talk, and while they do, you'll keep rising. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will dive into how success often feels like betrayal to those left behind, and why you must keep moving forward anyway. When you rise, you don't just elevate yourself, you change the dynamics of every relationship around you. The moment you begin to step into your purpose, something shifts. What once felt familiar now feels distant. People who once celebrated you now watch you with silent unease, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your success challenges the choices they didn't make. This is the uncomfortable truth about elevation. It can feel like betrayal to those who choose to stay where they are. It's not that you are abandoning them, it's that they feel left behind. Your growth is a mirror, reflecting back at them the roads they didn't take, the risks they were too afraid to embrace, and the potential they never fully stepped into. Look at Joseph. His brothers resented him because of his dreams. They saw his vision as a threat, not because it harmed them, but because it forced them to confront the reality of their own lives. Instead of celebrating his potential, they tried to destroy it. And yet, despite their betrayal, Joseph rose. Not through vengeance, not through bitterness, but through divine purpose. What was meant to break him became the very thing that positioned him for greatness, and the same will be true for you. As you grow, as you succeed, you may notice that some relationships shift. Friends who once stood by you may start to pull away. Conversations may become strained. People may begin to question your motives, as if your ambition is somehow an attack on their own choices. It's not, but change makes people uncomfortable, and rather than embracing their own growth, some would rather resent yours. But here's what you must remember. You cannot shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You cannot dim your light to keep others from feeling small. Your purpose is not up for negotiation, and your destiny is not a group project. If your success makes others feel left behind, that is their choice, not your burden. Jesus faced this as well. When he began his ministry, even his own hometown rejected him. People who had known him for years couldn't accept the idea that he was more than just the carpenter's son. They refused to see his calling because it required them to question their own lives. Instead of embracing his message, they chose to reject the messenger. And yet, Jesus didn't stop. He didn't return to the past to convince people to accept him. He kept moving forward because his mission was greater than their approval. So, what do you do when your success feels like betrayal to others? You keep going. You pray for them. You love them. But you do not let their discomfort stop your progress. Some will eventually come to understand. Some will support you from a distance, and others may never accept your journey. But that is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to fulfill the calling placed on your life. Because here's the truth. Those who are meant to walk with you will grow with you. Real friends, true supporters, will celebrate your success, not resent it. And those who cannot, they were never meant to be part of your next chapter. So walk boldly into your purpose. Do not apologize for growing. Do not hesitate to chase what God has placed in your heart. If your elevation creates distance, trust that it is necessary. The higher you climb, the clearer your vision will become, and the people meant to walk with you will meet you there. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will uncover why society often weaponizes morality against those who refuse to settle, and how you can stand firm in your truth. The moment you decide to rise, the world will try to pull you back down. But it won't always come as direct opposition. Sometimes the attack will come disguised as morality. Society has a way of making ambition look selfish, of making confidence seem like arrogance, and of twisting success into something to be ashamed of. They call it humility, but in reality, it's control. Throughout history, those who refuse to settle have been labeled as outcasts, rebels, or even dangerous. Jesus himself was accused of blasphemy, not because he did anything wrong, but because his very presence challenged the status quo. He healed on the Sabbath, dined with sinners, and spoke truth to power. He didn't fit into their religious expectations, so they called him a threat, and the same pattern repeats itself today. People will say, "You've changed." They will question your motives. They will call you greedy, prideful, or too ambitious. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your success makes them question their own choices. Rather than confront their own stagnation, they find comfort in condemning your growth. But here's what they don't understand. True humility is not playing small to make others feel comfortable. True humility is knowing who you are and walking in your calling with confidence. It is recognizing that your gifts are not for you alone, but for the world, and it is refusing to bury them out of fear of judgment. Consider the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30. 3 servants were given talents by their master. 2 of them invested and multiplied what they were given, but 1 buried his out of fear. And when the master returned, he rebuked the one who hid his talent, not because he lost anything, but because he refused to use what he had been given. Let that sink in. Playing small does not make you holy. Shrinking yourself does not make you righteous. Burying your potential does not make you humble. It makes you ineffective. So when society tries to make you feel guilty for aiming higher, for striving for greatness, remember this: you were given your gifts for a reason. Your calling is not up for debate. You are not required to explain your purpose to those who refuse to see it. Instead of apologizing for your ambition, embrace it. Instead of watering down your vision to fit into someone else's comfort zone, expand it. Instead of letting their words shake your confidence, let them sharpen your focus. Jesus didn't waste time arguing with those who doubted him. He didn't beg for approval. He stayed on his mission, knowing that the very people who ridiculed him would one day see the truth. And that's exactly what happened. The same will be true for you. So don't let their guilt tripping, their criticism, or their judgment hold you back. Let them talk. Let them question. But while they do, you'll keep building. You'll keep growing. You'll keep proving, not to them, but to yourself, that you were made for more. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will uncover the hidden power of failure and why the setbacks you fear are actually setting you up for your greatest breakthroughs. Most people fear failure, but what if I told you that failure is not your enemy? What if I told you that failure is the training ground for greatness? That every setback, every rejection, and every misstep is actually preparing you for the success you've been praying for. Look at the greatest figures in history, both biblical and modern. None of them reached their destiny without encountering failure along the way. Moses, chosen to lead Israel, first fled Egypt in fear after killing a man. David, anointed to be king, spent years hiding in caves before he ever sat on the throne. Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples, denied him 3 times before becoming the rock upon which the church was built. Failure refines you. It strips away your ego, tests your faith, and forces you to grow in ways that success never could. It teaches you resilience, humility, and perseverance, qualities that no easy road can instill. But the problem is, society has conditioned us to see failure as shameful. The world tells you that if you fail, you are unworthy, that if you fall short, you are not good enough, that if you make mistakes, you should quit. But that is a lie, a dangerous one. Jesus himself stumbled on the way to Calvary. Under the weight of the cross, he fell, not once but multiple times. But he got back up, and because he did, salvation was fulfilled. His momentary weakness was not his end. It was part of his journey to ultimate victory. So what do you do when failure knocks you down? You get back up. You analyze the lesson, adjust your approach, and try again. You refuse to let failure define you, because failure is not final unless you stop moving forward. Think of a goldsmith refining gold. The metal is placed in the fire, where impurities are burned away. The process is painful, but necessary. Without the fire, the gold remains impure. Without failure, your potential remains untested. Some of the most successful people in the world were once seen as failures. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. Abraham Lincoln lost multiple elections before becoming one of the most revered presidents in American history. Even Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team before becoming one of the greatest athletes of all time. They did not let failure stop them. They let failure shape them. And you must do the same. You will fall. You will make mistakes. You will face setbacks that make you question everything. But when that happens, remember this. Every great success story is written with pages of failure. Every powerful testimony includes moments of struggle. Every chosen one has walked through fire before stepping into their destiny. So do not fear failure. Embrace it. Learn from it. Use it as fuel. Because the very thing the enemy tries to use to break you will be the very thing God uses to build you. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will explore why authenticity is your greatest weapon, and how staying true to yourself will set you apart in a world full of pretenders. In a world where everyone is trying to fit in, standing out is your greatest advantage. And the key to standing out? Authenticity. Being real, being raw, being unapologetically you. The world is full of pretenders, people who change their identity to gain acceptance, who say what others want to hear, who play a role rather than live their truth. But here's the thing. Pretending is exhausting. It is a prison that traps people in a cycle of seeking approval rather than pursuing purpose. Authenticity, on the other hand, is liberating. It breaks chains. It sets people free. It commands respect in ways that pretense never could. The most powerful people in history were not the ones who tried to blend in. They were the ones who dared to be different. Look at Jesus. He didn't conform to the expectations of religious leaders. He didn't seek approval from the crowds. He walked in his truth, and that truth set people free. His authenticity made him dangerous to those who thrived on control. They couldn't manipulate him, they couldn't intimidate him, and they couldn't silence him. Why? Because he knew who he was and refused to be anything else, and that is exactly what you must do. But authenticity comes with a cost. Some people will reject you. Some will misunderstand you. Some will criticize you simply because they cannot control you. When you stop seeking validation, you become a threat to those who rely on the approval of others. Have you ever noticed how people admire authenticity but struggle to accept it? They are drawn to confidence, yet intimidated by it. They long for freedom, yet resist those who walk in it. Because when someone dares to be real, it exposes the masks others are wearing. David, before he became king, faced this very challenge. When he stood before Goliath, people doubted him. They told him he was too young, too small, too inexperienced. They tried to put Saul's armor on him, to make him conform to what a warrior was supposed to look like. But David refused. He knew that his strength wasn't in pretending to be someone else. It was in being exactly who God made him to be. And because he stood in that truth, he conquered the giant. And so will you. Authenticity is not about perfection. It is not about having all the answers. It is about showing up as you are, knowing that who you are is enough. It is about speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes. It is about walking in your calling, even when others doubt you. The enemy wants you to believe that you need to change, that you need to shrink yourself to be accepted, that you need to dim your light to make others comfortable. But that is a lie. You were created to shine, to lead, to be a beacon of truth in a world desperate for something real. So be bold, be real, be unapologetic, because the world does not need more copies. It needs originals. And when you walk in your truth, you give others permission to do the same. Stay with me, because in the final part, we will uncover why your destiny is non-negotiable, and how no amount of resistance can stop what is meant for you. No amount of doubt, resistance, or adversity can change what has been written for you. Your destiny is not up for debate. It is not in the hands of your critics. It is not something that can be stolen, delayed, or denied. What God has ordained for you will come to pass, if you have the courage to walk in it. Many people give up on their calling because the road gets hard. They mistake obstacles for signs that they should turn back. But challenges are not roadblocks. They are tests. Every great leader, every chosen one has faced resistance, not because they were on the wrong path, but because they were on the right one. Look at Joseph. He was betrayed, sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned. Every step of his journey looked like a setback, yet every moment was positioning him for the palace. His brothers thought they could destroy him, but in reality, they were unknowingly helping him fulfill his destiny. What was meant for harm, God turned into good, Genesis 50:20. The same is true for you. You may have faced rejection. You may have been overlooked. You may have struggled in silence, wondering if your dreams would ever come to pass. But your setbacks are not signs of defeat. They are evidence that your destiny is unfolding. Every delay, every disappointment, every difficulty has been refining you, strengthening you, and preparing you for what is ahead. The enemy only fights what he fears. The resistance you have faced is proof of the greatness within you. If you were insignificant, if you were not a threat, there would be no opposition. But because you are chosen, because you are walking in purpose, the enemy has tried to discourage you. Do not let him win. Remember Jesus. His destiny was written before he ever performed a miracle. Yet, he faced opposition at every turn. The Pharisees tried to discredit him. His own people rejected him. Even his closest friends abandoned him in his darkest hour. And yet, he fulfilled his purpose. The cross was not the end. It was the gateway to victory, and so it is with you. You were not created to live a life of fear, doubt, or hesitation. You were created to rise, to lead, to impact the world in ways beyond your imagination. But you must keep going. You must keep believing. You must keep pressing forward, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Your destiny is not something you have to chase. It is something you must walk into. And as you take each step in faith, doors will open that no man can shut. Opportunities will appear that logic cannot explain. Favor will follow you, not because of luck, but because of divine alignment. So take courage, walk boldly. Let go of the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of not being enough. You are enough. You have always been enough. And the path ahead of you is not just possible, it is inevitable. This is your moment. Your destiny is calling. Answer it. Conclusion. Your journey has just begun. We have walked through 10 powerful truths about what it means to be chosen. You now understand that your presence is a disruption, that isolation is part of elevation, that resistance is confirmation, and that failure is a stepping stone. You have learned that authenticity is your weapon and that your destiny is non-negotiable. Now it is time to live it. Do not wait for permission. Do not seek approval. Do not let fear hold you back. The world is waiting for you to step fully into who you were created to be. So go forth with confidence. Rise with purpose. Walk in your destiny. And remember, no one can take from you what God has already declared to be yours. Thank you for being on this journey. If this message has spoken to you, share it. Inspire someone else. And never forget, you were born for this.